The paths of renunciation or knowledge, jnana, and social engagement or action, karman, have antecedents in early Hindu scriptures as soteriological methods. Though there are various nuances to each as a spiritual discipline, they are antithetical to each other and are negotiated in diverse ways in Hindu traditions. The Bhagavad Gita articulates karma and jnana in the context of bhakti. Commentaries on the Gita offer different perspectives that expound on the relationship between these three yogas, and the Bhagavad Gita Bhashya is no different. For Ramanuja, the Gita has for its content the real nature of the individual self, the supreme self, the paths of karma, jnana, and bhakti yoga, which are the means to attain Krishna. In this paper, I examine the understanding of karma and jnana yoga and their relationship to bhakti. Ramanuja says in the introduction to his Bhashya that Krishna brought about the descent of bhakti yoga supported by jnana and karma. What does this mean? In what way do they support bhakti yoga? In the first section, then, I address the topic of the realization of the true nature of the individual self. Devotion, which is the culminating spiritual goal of the Bhagavad Gita, is said to be dependent on the vision of the individual self and as preparatory to the later development of bhakti yoga. Some issues I consider in this part of the paper include how action and knowledge are conceptualized in relation to each other, and how spiritual disciplines of karma and jnana yoga function in the realization of the true nature of the self. In the second section, I trace the development of the vision of the self from the first part as it culminates in bhakti yoga or single-minded devotion to Krishna. A commentary is by its very nature structured by the conceptual framework of the root text. Ramanuja's development of the three yogas in his Bhashya is punctuated by other issues that the Gita is preoccupied with, and some of these concerns are only tangentially related to the topic of this paper. So in order to understand the relationship between the three yogas, I only examine specific verses and the commentary on them. Additionally, I have only explored chapters 1 through 12 of the Bhagavad Gita for this particular study. An important preliminary doctrine of the Bhagavad Gita is the difference between the essential natures of the individual self from that of matter. Krishna begins with this distinction to ease Arjuna's confusion, which has led to the hero's withdrawal from battle. The first 30 verses or so of chapter 2 establish the individual self as eternal and pure, lacking the deficiencies of matter such as impermanency and change. Due to association with Prakriti, however, the individual self misidentifies itself as an agent of the myriad actions that an embodied being undertakes. Once this knowledge of the individual self is known from scripture, Shastra, what one does with such an understanding differs in the type of yoga one undertakes. The very first yoga that is detailed in the Bhashya is Karma Yoga, and Ramanuja's preference for this spiritual method is hard to miss. For though Karma Yoga is mentioned in the context of the knowledge of the distinction between the self and the body, Jnana Yoga does not make its debut until chapter 3. Commenting on Bhagavad Gita 238, where Krishna has just concluded the teaching of the distinction between the self and the body, Ramanuja notes, Evam atma yatatmiya jnanam upadishya tatpurvakam moksha sadhana bhutam karma yogam vaktum arabhate. Thus, having taught the knowledge of the real nature of the individual self, he, Krishna, begins to teach karma yoga, which, when preceded by it, the knowledge of the self, forms the means of liberation. Armed with that knowledge of the self as a non-agent, one undertakes actions with non-attachment. Engagement in karma in this manner refines the mind so that one remains unaffected by dualities such as pain, pleasure, passion, aversion, and eventually such constant practice leads to the vision of the self, or Atman. More immediately though, such practice is said to bring about steadfastness to knowledge, jnana nishtha. Commenting on Bhagavad Gita 252, Ramanuja claims that Shastra Janya Atma Jnana Purvaka Karma Yogaha Sthita Pragnataha Kya Jnana Nistham Apadayati. Jnana Nishtha Rupa Sthita Pragnatatu Yoga Akhyam Atma Avalokanam Sadayati. So karma yoga that is preceded by the knowledge of the self gained from scripture or shastra leads to steadfastness towards knowledge, called the state of steady wisdom, sthita pragnata. The state of steady wisdom, which is the form of steadfastness to knowledge, brings about the vision of the self called yoga in this particular context. If we map the path of karma yoga, discussed thus far, then one begins with knowledge of the distinction of the self and the body, which is gained from Shastra. Keeping this in mind, one engages in actions with detachment, which leads to steadfastness to knowledge, and its continued practice eventually results in Atma Darshana or Atma Avalokana. By the conclusion of the Bhashya on chapter 2, we are quite clear on the nature of karma yoga and its implementation. And though Jnana Yoga is not mentioned, Jnana is stated as an aspect of Karma Yoga in the form of steadfastness to knowledge, Jnana Nishtha. While Jnana Yoga does not find mention in chapter 2, Ramanuja is obliged to address it in the next chapter, as the Bhagavad Gita specifically mentions it. In the introduction to chapter 3, prior to the beginning of the commentary on specific verses, Ramanuja prepares us for the similarities between the two yogas when he says, the vision of the self is attainable through Jnana Yoga, which is derived from acquisition of knowledge of the true nature of the self and actions performed without attachment to fruits. This is similar to the path of Karma Yoga we saw earlier. So is there a difference between the two? This requires a closer examination. First of all, Krishna mentions Jnana Yoga to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita 3:3. He says, Loke asmin dvida nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena samkhyanam karma yogena yoginam. O faultless one, in this world a twofold steadfastness was declared by me of old previously, by the yoga of knowledge of Samkhyas and by the yoga of action of yogins. From the verse itself, the Bhagavad Gita verse, we can glean that Samkhyas and yogins engage in two different spiritual methods. Ramanuja adds that Krishna taught these two yogas according to the qualifications of the practitioners, because not everyone has the adhikara to engage in Jnana Yoga. He then outlines a preparatory regimen for one wishing to embark on Jnana Yoga. He says, Na hi sarvo laukika purusha samjata moksha abhilasha tadanim eva Jnana Yoga adhikare prabhavati apitu anabhilasha samhita palena kevala parama purusha aradhana rupena anushtitena karmana vidvasta manomalaha avyakulendriyo jnana nishtayam adhikaroti. Indeed, not all ordinary men in whom the desire for liberation is produced immediately becomes capable for Jnana Yoga, but he alone, who by means of actions executed in the form of worship to the Supreme Person only, without desire for fruits, completely rid of his inner impurities and his senses remaining unagitated, he alone with such qualities qualifies for steadfastness to knowledge, or Jnana Nishta. So what does this mean? We have knowledge of the individual self plus worship of the Supreme Person, leading to steadfastness of knowledge, or Jnana Nishta, which readies one for Jnana Yoga. In contrast to Karma Yoga, here, worship is enjoined instead of actions undertaken with non-attachment. What does worship of Krishna entail? Ramanuja has already hinted in his introduction to this chapter that Jnana Yoga is dependent on the knowledge of the self and actions undertaken with non-attachment. According to Bhagavad Gita 1846, which Ramanuja cites as pramana, the term for worship, aradhana, denotes all activities done for the worship of the Supreme Person. So Bhagavad Gita 1846 says, Yatha pravritti bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakarmana tam abhiarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. So man reaches perfection having worshipped with his own actions, him from whom arises the activity of all beings and by whom all this is pervaded. The worship of the Supreme Person is through the performance of one's duty, which is what a practitioner of Karma Yoga also engages in. The only difference between the paths of karma and jnana thus far is that the performance of detached actions for karma yoga are based on the understanding of the body-self dichotomy, in contrast to actions performed as worship of Krishna in one's preparation towards jnana yoga. Non-attachment to fruits of one's actions occurs in both cases, preparation for Jnana Yoga and also Karma Yoga, but the motivations are different. Ramanuja says that without actions that are done with non-attachment and by way of worshiping the Supreme, one does not achieve Jnana-nishta. And this is a state that is aspired to both in his discussion of Karma Yoga as well. Comparing the two paths discussed thus far, it looks something like this. Both the actions engaged in without attachment and actions performed as worship to Krishna serve a purpose. They are said to cancel the effects of past karmas. But the mental disposition or buddhi of a practitioner determines the suitable path that needs to be taken. Karma Yoga is for one whose buddhi is easily agitated by objects of the senses, whereas Jnana Yoga is for those who are not so inclined. Unless past karmas are annulled, either by worship of Govinda or non-attachment, engaging in Jnana Yoga is not advisable. According to Ramanuja, he says in his Bhashya on Bhagavad Gita 3.5, in this world, no one can survive without doing karma, because the gunas automatically predispose one to action. And Jnana Yoga is attained only by one who has qualified his inner organ after annulling past karmas by means of Karma Yoga. Otherwise, one who engages in Jnana Yoga becomes a hypocrite. Thus, Jnana-nishta is an essential state or condition in one's spiritual progress, whether for Karma Yoga or for one aspiring to engage in Jnana Yoga. If we map the connection between Jnana and Karma Yogas discussed thus far, we have the following. So you have two sort of differentiated paths of knowledge of the self with actions without attachment or worship of the Supreme Person, leading to one state or condition, the steadfastness of knowledge, after which the seeker is free to engage in either Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga to ultimately realize the vision of the essential nature of the individual self. After one achieves Jnana-nishta, one can continue either on the path of Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga. Ramanuja, of course, favors Karma Yoga. In chapters 3 to 6, he repeatedly promotes the virtues of Karma Yoga and the ease with which it can be practiced. Prior to his enumeration of the superiority of karma over Jnana Yoga, he summarizes his position, and this is his conclusion. Therefore, he who, with the help of the mind, striving to see the self, directs his senses to work, which is enjoined by Shastra, and who then begins to practice Karma Yoga after renouncing attachments of the senses, he is superior to a man following steadfastness to knowledge, Jnana-nishta. The term Jnana-nishta here, I think, should be taken in the sense of Jnana Yoga, because Jnana-nishta is also already a part of or an aspect of Karma Yoga, and it would not make sense to take Jnana-nishta as Jnana-nishta in this particular context, I think. There are several reasons as to why Karma Yoga is better than Jnana Yoga, and I consider them here in brief. First, Jnana Yoga implies non-actions, and this is problematic. For devotion to Jnana alone is not possible, since the Bhagavad Gita itself says, no man experiences freedom from activity. One cannot abandon all actions, as one needs to take care of the body, which is necessary even for a Jnana-nishta, until he attains the vision of the self. Second, the understanding of the true nature of the self is incorporated in Karma Yoga, as it involves contemplation on the individual self as a non-agent, the fact that the body is different from the self. Therefore, performing work with detachment, considering oneself a non-agent, one attains the supreme vision of the self through Karma Yoga itself. Ramanuja claims that because Karma Yoga includes knowledge of the self, it is a form, akara, of jnana, or sometimes he says that it acquires a form of jnana. The third reason why Ramanuja considers Karma Yoga to be better is due to the fact that the wheel of life, which has been set in motion by the Supreme Person, has to be constantly kept going by obligatory rites, by sacrifices, and so on. And those who do not do so will live in sin, as rajas and tamas will dominate in these, or predominate in these individuals. As a consequence, even if one engages in Jnana Yoga, it will not be fruitful. Fourth, even if a person is qualified for Jnana Yoga, they must choose the path of action, because Karma Yoga must always be performed for the guidance of the world, even if not for oneself. as an exemplar for others, if one who is competent to engage in Jnana Yoga but does not undertake Karma Yoga, it will lead to the ruin of people, and this evil will bring the follower of solely Jnana Yoga no success. On a fundamental level then, association with Prakriti and the influence of the gunas is unavoidable for embodied beings, including a Jnana Yogin. Karma Yoga is the best spiritual practice since the path of Jnana Yoga is riddled with obstacles and is bound to fail. For Ramanuja, the superiority of Karma Yoga is due to the fact that it is easy to perform, is free from error, is independent of any other method, and it also includes knowledge of the self within its scope. Now, in addition to these two paths of Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga in the discussion of attaining the realization of the individual self, there is an exceptional case that Ramanuja states where an individual neither needs to resort to Jnana Yoga nor Karma Yoga to acquire the vision of the self. Such a person is not in need of either yogas, since he has by himself found enjoyment in the self. He strives for the realization of the self alone and is satisfied by the vision of the self alone. Such an individual is not in pursuit of the realization of the self, as are Karma Yogins and Jnana Yogins, and because the vision of the self is already available to him, and no other means are necessary to obtain it. So there seem to be at this juncture about three possible ways, or maybe two, through which to realize that the individual self. Right? That is a prerequisite for the development of bhakti. And I've summarized the three ways that Ramanuja has discussed until now. Though Ramanuja admits that either karma or jnana yoga can be resorted to for the one who desires the realization of the self, he's clear that engaging in activity of some sort is ideal due to the powerful influences of Prakriti and the gunas. Hence, only Karma Yoga can completely and effectively bring these gunas under control. The commentary on the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita concludes with a description of the vision of the self that has been the ultimate goal up to this point. When this is obtained, the seeker is ready for bhakti. And so I move on to the second section of my paper on Bhakti Yoga. While the paths of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga described above aid in the vision of the individual self as different from the body, the next step is to realize that the self is the Shesha of the Supreme Person. Thus far, the self's sense of agency is said to be a result of its association with Prakriti. However, this agency ultimately rests on the Supreme Person, who is, according to Ramanuja, the Sheshan over matter and individual